Well, my shock is that any scientist could make such a statement as to be shocked by a few days of high temperatures like this. Let me explain. In my very first video on climate change, I started by explaining the difference between weather and climate. What is the difference between weather and climate? Weather, as we know, can be sunny, rainy, windy, snowy, or even stormy. But such events are weather. They are not climate. So what's the difference? Well, climate is not weather over a week or a year or a decade. At the very least, it is weather over a 30-year period. Preferably longer, but that is the minimum. So let us take a graph of the hottest days since the late 1800s and have a look at that in terms of climate. There have been different phases of climate alarmism, but here now we're in extreme weather alarmism, and that, frankly, is not scientific. You cannot pick a single weather event and then claim it's climate. So, for example, you take a hurricane or a flood, anything else, what you would have to do is look at the pattern of that event, that flood, that drought, over a long time to see what the trend is. And when you do that, it exposes the complete lying, and the word has to be lying, of today's modern climate alarmists. This is a record of the actual temperatures measured on a normal scale for central England since 1880. The red line shows the climatic change in temperature. You can see how small it is. There's a small and gradual rise, which is what you would expect from the warming out of the Little Ice Age. And there was no doubt there was a Little Ice Age. But that warming actually started in the year 1700, so it was warming about 150 years before the Industrial Revolution and man started to put CO2 into the atmosphere. So at a time when all the alarmists are telling you we have the hottest this, the hottest day, etc., it's simply not true. Even their own model shows the Earth is currently cooling. 7.5 years is too short a period to show a climate change. I will not resort to the same dirty tricks that the alarmists use by using weather to describe climate. As a retired water resources engineer, I used to be in charge of climate stations all over big parts of the UK, such as Wales. I can assure you that when you place a meteorological station to say measure temperature, you make sure it is not near another influence that could distort the data. So the very last thing you want to put a station in is a city with its urban heat island warming effect. But these are the temperatures that are now being used to panic the public. And it is totally wrong. London, for example, can be 10 degrees C warmer than the surrounding countryside, simply because of this urban heat island effect. So now let's take a look at what the world temperature was on that Tuesday when London hit about 40 degrees centigrade. Well, there's a surprise. It was only 0.2 degrees warmer than the 1979 to 2000 average, 0.2 degrees warmer on that one day than it was 20 odd years ago. These are the facts. And in fact, if you notice here, Antarctic was minus 2.5 degrees than it was in the 79 to 2000 30-year period. Today, if you take areas like North America and look at the reducing number of hot days there are in America, they have been reducing since the 1930s. Yes, there are cycles within that, but the basic overall picture is one of fewer and cooler heat waves, not more. Now let us look at some history here, just to give a perspective of the 1 or 2 days of hot weather we've had recently. Over 100 years ago, in 1911, there was a worldwide heat wave. It wasn't just for a few days. And in France, over 40,000 people died of heat stroke. In London, temperatures reached over 100, and that is when the urban heat island effect was much less. So you had similar temperatures 120 odd years ago than you had just for the few days. The difference is, of course, in 1911 it went on for a long time. And just look at what happened here. During 11 hellish days, horses dropped in the street and babies didn't wake up from their naps. Boats in Providence Harbour oozed pitch and began to take on water. Tar in the streets bubbled like hot syrup. Trees shed their leaves, grass turned to dust, and cow's milk started to dry up. And that was a report from America, 1911. I hope this short 5-minute video has at least exposed to you some of the truth behind the totally fake alarmism that's going on with the current weather in the UK.